Welcome to Random Movie Reviews. I'm Nathan, and today I'll be talking about Rockstar. So why am I wearing my leather jacket and my Iron Maiden t-shirt? Fair question. As of recently, I've been kind of rediscovering my love for classic heavy metal music, whether it be Black Sabbath or Iron Maiden, or Judas Priest. Specifically, I've been really getting back into Judas Priest's music. I grew up listening to Judas Priest. I absolutely love that type of music. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to be a guitar player. And so I've just been kind of like rediscovering my love for that band and stuff like that. And then I remembered something very randomly. I was like, didn't they make a movie about Judas Priest? Oh yeah, that's right. The movie Rockstar, starring Mark Wahlberg, a movie that I had seen before actually. I only saw it once. I thought it was so cheesy and ridiculous, but thought it was fairly entertaining, but I hadn't seen it in years. I was like, I discovered after the fact that apparently that was based, the story itself is completely fictional, but it was inspired by the true story of Tim Owens. For those who may not know, in the 90s, Rob Halford left the band Judas Priest to do some solo stuff, and there was also some bad blood between the band at the time as well, and they were looking to basically restart Judas Priest with the new singer.
Julie Vito and her cousin Crystal Lentine were not only fans of British Steel, they were also friends with Judas Priest's drummer, Scott Travis.
In January of '96, the band flew me over to regroup and start running through some of the material that KK and Glenn had written, and I brought this videotape with me, kind of reluctantly.
They weren't really looking for a Rob Halford clone, per se, for Judas Priest. If they were going to restart Judas Priest as a new band without Rob Halford, they were looking for new vocals.
And the drummer of the band had some friends send him a tape of them going to a Judas Priest tribute band show, the band being called British Steel. And on that tape was Tim Owens, the lead singer of this Judas Priest cover band, singing Judas Priest songs really, really well. And they were looking for singers at the time, and he showed the band, and they're like, holy crap, we should get this guy to fly out and audition and see if he'd be a good fit for the band, because he sounds so similar to Rob Halford. It's that same type of vocal style. Anyway, this story was published in the New York Times, I believe, and movie studios started auctioning around the rights to this article so that they could make a movie out of it, because it sounds like a great idea for a movie, right? A normal, everyday guy who has the aspirations of being a rock star, and he's doing this tribute band thing, and then he, by chance, gets discovered and gets to live the dreams of being a rock star. Kind of a great idea for a movie. And so that's how the movie Rockstar with Mark Wahlberg came about. This is the perfect example of what I would call a guilty pleasure movie. This movie is ridiculous, it's incredibly campy, cheesy, hyper melodramatic, but thoroughly entertaining. It's a totally entertaining movie if you watch it with your tongue planted firmly in your cheek, because there's no way that you can take this movie seriously, even though the movie is taking itself very seriously. It's just a very funny movie to watch in a post-Spinal Tap world. It indulges in all of the cliches that you would expect this type of movie would indulge in. You know, a normal everyday guy dreams of being a rock star, and then he is a rock star, and he's living all the debauchery and all the obscene stuff that comes along with it, like the women and the drugs and all this stuff, and they make it to the top, and then they realize that, you know, this is a shallow lifestyle, this is not who I wanted to be. And it's like the movie follows all of those cliches to a T. I realize it's actually kind of ridiculous for me to be wearing a leather jacket right now, because it is 90 fucking degrees outside, and it was a poor decision. So, okay, let's talk about this silly ass movie. So the movie takes place in the mid 1980s, and it follows the character of Chris Izzy Cole, played by Mark Wahlberg, who is obsessed with the heavy metal band Steel Dragon. This fictional band is obviously modeled after Judas Priest, because Judas Priest was approached about the movie, and they're like, we don't really want to be a part of this because this script kind of sucks, and they were correct. The band members consist of real musicians. So there's Zakk Wylde, famous for Ozzy Osbourne and Black Label Society. He plays guitar in the band. There's Jason Bonham. There's also Jeff Pilson, who played bass for Dokken and Foreigner and did some work with Dio. So the movie has a ton of these little musical cameos, and that kind of fills up the band of Steel Dragon. And then there's the rhythm guitar player Dominic West, most famous for The Wire. He's also in the movie too. And the lead singer, Bobby Beers is his name, a ridiculous name for a ridiculous band, and frankly, a ridiculous movie. And Chris is absolutely obsessed with Steel Dragon, and he's obsessed with Bobby Beers. And one of the things that's really fascinating right off the bat is that he doesn't have any aspirations of being his own frontman. He specifically wants to be Bobby Beers. He wants to dress like him, he wants to sing like him, he wants to have a British accent like him. So it's not just the fact that he wants to be a rock star, he specifically wants to be Bobby Beers. And so unsurprisingly, he has his own tribute band, Blood Pollution, which is named after one of the songs of Steel Dragon, where one of the guitar players in that band is played by our main man, Timothy Oliphant. And this is managed by Chris's girlfriend, Emily, played by Jennifer Aniston. They do a gig early on in the movie, and it's getting a good reaction from the crowd. And one of the ways this movie kind of deviates from one of the cliches I would expect to see something in a movie like this, which is the parents being like, "What are you doing with your life? Why don't you get a real job? Like, why are you trying to be like this rock and roll singer? It's never going to happen." His parents are oddly supportive, specifically the dad. He's at the show going, "Yeah, that's my son." And so that got a big chuckle out of me. But it does go against kind of the typical conventions you would see in a movie like this, but every other thing in this movie is the most cliche thing ever, and it's kind of great. So the show's going good, but Chris is getting mad that the band isn't playing the song exactly, like note for note, the way that Steel Dragon would play. And this was something that was set up earlier in the movie. And so him and Timothy Oliphant, they go at it. He gets pissed off at him, breaks his amp for not doing exactly the same guitar playing that the way it's seen in the band, Steel Dragon. And then they start fighting on stage. And that leads to Chris being kicked out of the band and being replaced with another lead singer who had their own Steel Dragon tribute band. And they're like, "We're going to bring him instead. You're out of the band because you're fucking crazy and you're obsessed with Steel Dragon, and we actually want to make our own original songs."
Wouldn't you rather fail as yourself than succeed as some Bobby Beers clone?
Well, yeah, well, Rob, maybe you can write me a song about why in the hell I would ever want to do that.
All right, you're gone, man.
Hey, what's so fucking funny? This is my mic stand. I'm taking it.
And you know what the worst part of all is? I never learned to read.
But coincidentally, the next day, because the first concert they did was being filmed by somebody and the tape got sent out to the band Steel Dragon, who was looking for a new lead singer, Chris gets the call from Dominic West saying, "Hey, it's me, I'm from Steel Dragon." At first he doesn't believe him, so he asks him some trivia questions and he gets it right, and he's like, "Listen, we want to fly you out. Things with our singer ain't going too well. We heard your tape. Is that really you, or was that dubbed over?" Which was based on an actual thing that happened with Tim Owens when Judas Priest first heard him.
They don't believe it's your voice on the videotape. They think it was dubbed in somehow, and this isn't really you singing. So
Chris gets flown out, and he brings his girlfriend, Emily, with him. And there we get another great music cameo where another singer's being auditioned, and it's the lead singer of Steel Panther. But before that, Chris comes face to face with his hero, who's, freaking out. He's yelling at the band, tells him that, "Oh, you just want to be like me," and all this stuff, and reveals that he's gay. And he's wondering if that's why he's being kicked out of the band, which is, obviously that's related to Judas Priest. Billy storms off, and then Chris has to audition under these strange circumstances where he's in the booth and the band is looking right at him, and he has to sing one of their songs. Fun fact, obviously Mark Wahlberg doesn't do any of the singing in this movie. The singer who does the voice of Mark Wahlberg's singing in this movie is the lead singer of a band called Steel Heart. I cannot pronounce this gentleman's name, but he does have a lot of videos online with his band, one of which went viral of him doing a live performance of one of his songs, and the vocal range on this guy is absolutely insane. So that's the guy who's singing for Mark Wahlberg, and he auditions and he knocks it out of the park, and then boom, he is officially part of Steel Dragon. He's going to be the new member, and then they're going to go on tour, and they're going to do their first real show where Chris is obviously very nervous about this. That scene is actually pretty well shot, where he's going up like on this platform that's going to be lifting him up into the arena and all that stuff, and it's shot really well. It's like, oh man, that's awesome. They're singing the song, he's rocking it, he's walking on the stairs, and then he takes a fall and busts his head open pretty bad. He's bleeding, and it's like, oh no, this is the big moment, he blew it. But then he picks up the microphone and he just lets out a badass rock scream. And it's really funny. Throughout this movie, there are numerous moments where Chris, Mark Wahlberg's character, can't control himself, and he just has to let out rock and roll screams. But yeah, he's bleeding, he's picking up the microphone, and he looks even more badass now, and it kind of cemented him as like, oh, all right, he's now officially the lead guy of Steel Dragon. He can sing just as good as Bobby Beers, and, he's bleeding, he looks awesome. That's heavy metal, man. And shortly after that, it doesn't take long for Chris to kind of get swept up in the rock and roll fantasy. And Emily, his girlfriend, is the only person that's kind of trying to keep him grounded. She's supportive of him, and she's like the opposite of Yoko Ono. She's like the most caring and supporting female character in this type of movie I've ever seen ever. Jennifer Aniston's actually pretty great in this movie. Genuinely charming and likable. She's the only person that really feels like has like a genuine character with a little bit of depth, where everybody else is just a walking, talking cliche in this movie. And very quickly, Emily realizes that this is something that she doesn't really want to be a part of. There's a great scene where she's in a car with all of the other Rockstar's wives. And it reminded me of that scene in Goodfellas where Karen meets with all the other mob wives. And she's like, oh God, I don't want to be anything like these women. It was very reminiscent of that scene. That's kind of what popped out to me. So Emily is like, you know what? Listen, you're going to be touring for a while. I don't want to be on the road with you. It's a lot. It's really exhausting and kind of boring for me. And there's a job opportunity for me in Seattle, and I know you're going to be touring through there, so let's just meet up back in Seattle. I don't want to be on the road anymore. And, Chris is bummed out about it, but ultimately he understands. And then he goes right back to the rock and roll stuff, doing the drugs, driving a motorcycle through a hotel lobby, and, all the classic cliche rock and roll shit and all this stuff. And he's getting swept up in the lifestyle. But by the time Chris does get to Seattle, and he's supposed to meet up with Emily again while he's living the rock and roll dream and just getting swept up in the fantasy and becoming a completely different person, Emily, meets up with him where all of these women are surrounding him, and he's clearly, doing all this stuff and drugs and having sex with all these women and all this stuff. And he forgets, he's like, oh, why are you here? She's like, we said we'd meet here. And he's like, oh, are we in Seattle? It always makes me laugh. She's like, we're in Seattle, and he's too stoned. Here's the thing. I realize as I'm saying this out loud, it's just like, it sounds like a really heart-wrenching, sad, almost like a Wolf of Wall Street type of movie, but the way it's presented is so soap opera, cartoony, melodramatic, and just cheesy. It's so damn cheesy, and that's what makes even the more serious moments in this movie hilarious, because of how sincere but how campy it all feels. I mean, that's partially why this movie is so damn entertaining. So they essentially break up, and Chris ends up getting, depressed, but he's still touring with the band, and the tour now ends, and he's, written a bunch of songs for the band, and he's like, all right, I'm ready to do the next album. And they're like, listen, you don't write songs. That's not how this works. We write the songs and you sing them. And he's like, but I wrote all these songs, and I don't want to be just like a singer for hire. And they're like, well, that's what you are. The band members are just complete dicks. So at this point, Chris is like, this is not what I envisioned, even though it kind of is, because in the movie it's like he wanted to be Bobby Beers, and so that's why Steel Dragon brought him into the band, because he sings like him, he performs like him, he kind of looks like him, has his type of attitude. But along the way, he realized that he wanted to be his own artist, and he actually wanted to write original songs. This all culminates in a scene where he talks with the road manager, Mats, who's kind of a scuzzy, scummy character throughout the movie, very like Harvey Weinstein, like, oh, you want to go backstage? What are you going to do for me, lady? Like, he's a bit of a scumbag character. And then all of a sudden the movie's like, we're going to give him a little bit of moment of heart, where he's like, he was talking to Chris while Chris is feeling down. He talked about how he was in a previous relationship that it kind of freaked him out about having his whole life laid out for him. And, it's not the life that he envisioned or wanted for himself. And so he ended up saying, hey, I gotta go take a piss, and then he's thinking about all this stuff, and then he just walks away and starts a new life and didn't look back, right? This is very important because this is setting up for the last show that Chris has with Steel Dragon, where he's singing, and as was shown in the beginning of the movie, where Chris goes to the Steel Dragon concert and he's singing along and he's getting the attention of Bobby Beers, and Bobby Beers is looking down, he sees Mark Wahlberg is singing, and he's singing really good and all this stuff, and now the same thing is happening to Chris, kind of a full circle moment, because this movie is about as subtle as an anvil to the balls. But this time around, Chris actually wants to fan the participate, so he's handing the microphone to him, he's singing it, he's doing a good job, and he brings him up on stage, and they're singing together, and he's like, hey, why don't you sing the rest of the set? And then he walks off stage, and he goes to Mads, he's like, hey, I gotta take a piss, wink, wink. And then he goes off to Seattle, and this is the best part about Rockstar. For those who don't know, Chris invented grunge music because he goes to Seattle, meets up with Timothy Oliphant back in Seattle, and they start a grunge band, and that's where grunge comes from. He created that, so that's pretty cool. Meets up back with Emily. They have a heart-to-heart moment, and he's like, saying that he missed her and that life wasn't the same without her, and they kiss, and the movie ends. Like I always say, the worst thing that a movie can be is boring. You can make fun of this movie for, the silly performances, for how obvious and melodramatic and sappy and cliche and campy it is. But at the end of the day, it's an entertaining movie. And I laughed a lot while watching it. I enjoy this movie in an ironic kind of way. I know not everybody probably does. I'm sure people genuinely love this movie. Hey, as long as a movie entertains you, it does its job. That's the way I see it. So anyway, that's my thoughts on this movie, Rockstar. I'd love to hear from you guys. What are your thoughts on this movie? Have you seen it? Do you like it? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Mention it in the comments below. Also mention to me, just in general, what are some of your favorite guilty pleasure movies? Because for me, this would definitely constitute as being a big guilty pleasure movie. But if you have any, mention it in the comments below. And as always, thank you guys for watching.